It is not uncommon to remember women in connection to their male relatives. We frequently refer to them as the wife of, the sister of, or the daughter of. This is also the case of Alma Margareta Maria Schindler, later called Alma Mahler, usually known as the wife of Gustav Mahler and sometimes even his downfall. Even so, sometimes it's hard to remember that she actually was a really bright and talented composer. That's why this time we're telling her story.
Alma was born in a humble family in Vienna, Austria on August 31st, 1879. She was the daughter of landscape painter Emil Jakob Schindler and Hamburg singer Anna von Bergen. The family had to share their apartment with one of her father's artist colleagues, who was the secret affair of her mother, and the father to Alma's half-sister, Grete. Luckily, Emil won an art prize, which ended their financial misery and allowed the family to be introduced to the Austrian artistic upper class. Alma was very close to her father. She idolized him. She would spend a lot of time with him, learning about music and literature. He also introduced her to various artists of the time. That's when Alma started to be really interested in composing. Soon, Alma's mother began an affair with Emil's student and assistant, Karl Moll. When Alma's father died when she was 13, Anna married Karl, whom Alma hated to hell.
Eventually, Karl Moll became the vice president of the Association of Austrian Fine Arts Secession, whose president was Gustav Klimt. This way, Alma met him and fell in love with him. Gustav was way older than Alma, and they knew that no one was to find out that they were flirting, so they would see each other secretly. Gustav was kind of a mentor figure to her. She even wrote in her diaries that he showed her how to kiss like a woman. Also, that was a big moment for Alma as a muse because she inspired Klimt's biggest painting, The Kiss. But Karl found out and forbid Gustav Klimt to see her again.
Alma was 20 years old when composer Alexander von Zemlinsky saw some of her compositions and became her tutor. They started a stormy love affair in which Alma apparently tortured him and played with him while he was falling in love with her. This lasted for a year, when she decided to leave him.
In 1902, after she left von Zemlinsky, she decided to marry Gustav Mahler, the known Vienna court opera's director and 19 years older than her. An interesting thing about her marriage to Gustav is that this influenced the memory of Alma to the point that she is usually known as the woman who destroyed Gustav Mahler. When Alma was about to marry Gustav, he requested her to stop composing because it was shameful for him to have a wife who would also be his composition. This was hard for Alma because until that moment she had lived for her music, but she agreed for the sake of Gustav being happy. She had some drafts of her compositions, but she changed her role to be a wife, a mother, and Gustav's assistant. Alma was unhappy with this life. Even the birth of her two daughters didn't fill her inner emptiness. Moreover, their daughter Maria died when she was 5, and as their marriage sank, Gustav got sick and Alma left to the spa town of Tobelbad. There, in 1910, Alma met the young architect Walter Gropius and consoled herself for years of deprivation. But eventually Gustav discovered the affair and realized that he was losing his wife for stealing the music from her. So he started to take more care of her and even dedicated his 8th symphony to Alma, which became his greatest musical triumph. He also published 5 of Alma's Lieder compositions. On 18 May 1911, Gustav died.
In 1912, the enfant terrible of the Viennese art scene, Oskar Kokoschka, created a portrait of Alma and fell in love with her. They started a toxic relationship in which Oskar became obsessed with her. So, in 1913, he painted Bride of the Wind, a painting about their relationship. Besides countless paintings and drawings of Alma, he ordered to make a brazen life-size doll. Meanwhile, Alma resumed contact with Walter Gropius, and in 1915 they got married.
In 1916, Alma and Walter's daughter, Manon, was born. During the World War I, many composers, writers, painters, conductors, actors, and academics regularly gathered at Alma's house, and they all were inspired, promoted, and criticized by her. One of them was Franz Werfel, who fell in love with her. After Gropius found out that Alma's newborn, Martin, wasn't his son, they divorced. Martin died 10 months after his birth.
With France, Alma recovered her creative freedom, but it was mostly because they needed money. World War II was upon Europe and they started selling their work. Alma published 5 of her songs, and a Universal Edition released a further edition of the 4th Lieder, which had been previously released with the support of Gustav Mahler. They got married when she was 50 in 1929. In 1935, Manon suddenly died of polio, and priest Johannes Holsteiner gave the eulogy, whom Anna was having an affair with. On 12 February 1938, an agreement with Nazi Germany ended the independence of Austria, so they had to leave because her daughter Anna was half Jewish. They started a period of runaway across Europe until they decided to leave to America, so they ended up in Los Angeles. They had a very social life with Austrian and German immigrants who lived there, and they started earning more money because of Franz's work, until he died in 1945, which consequently made Alma move to New York in 1951. Because of her marriages, one of the names she got was the Great Widow. Most of Alma's life is known thanks to her own diaries, which were transcribed into an autobiography. But she had problems with her ghostwriters because they wanted to remove the anti-Semitic and Nazi thoughts from her texts. This autobiography was considered ambiguous and contradictory and reinforced the egocentric image she gave her whole life. Alma Mahler-Werfeld died in her New York apartment on 11 December 1964 at the age of 85.
It's sad how Alma's life was defined by the men she was with. She was very independent, and she gave the impression of doing whatever she wanted, whenever she wanted. But really, her actions were determined by what her partner wanted. She first stopped composing because of Gustav. She then abandoned music altogether because of the life he gave her, and finally she even left Europe for France. And even after having all these men tell her what to do, because of her rebellious attitude, she gets referred to things such as witch or malevolent muse. You will never know what Alma's compositions would have grown into, what changes she could have made for women in music, and all because of the misogynistic climate she lived in. Nevertheless, what we know is that she was a great woman with an attitude ahead of her time, and she probably marked the way for the women who felt imprisoned in a role that was not made for them.